In August 2023, Britain witnessed something unthinkable. A neonatal nurse stood in the dock, convicted of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Lucy Letby had been found guilty of murdering 7 newborn babies. The woman trusted to save lives had instead taken them. At the Countess of Chester Hospital, where families came seeking hope, instead they found a predator in plain sight. The verdict sent shockwaves across the nation. Britain had never seen a case quite like this. A healthcare worker targeting the most vulnerable patients of all. The judge handed down the harshest possible sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The media declared her Britain's worst child serial killer. Public outrage reached a fever pitch. Lucy Letby became the most hated woman in Britain. But what if everything we thought we knew about this case was wrong? If you're finding value in this, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. As we discussed Lucy Letby's dark reputation, prosecutors believed they had built an airtight case against her. The Crown's evidence centered on 3 devastating pillars of proof. First, the pattern. 7 babies died during shifts when Letby was present. 10 more suffered unexplained collapses under her watch. The statistical odds seemed impossible to ignore. But the prosecution's smoking gun was the method they claimed she used. Air embolism. Deliberately injected air into tiny bloodstreams. A silent killer that leaves virtually no trace behind. The Crown argued this explained the sudden, inexplicable collapses. Then came the psychological evidence that seemed to seal her fate. Letby's own handwritten notes, discovered in her home. Words that prosecutors claimed revealed a guilty conscience. Combined, this evidence painted a portrait of calculated murder. But as we'll discover, each pillar of this case contained cracks that experts are now exposing. As we discussed, the prosecution painted Letby as a calculated killer. But their entire case rested on one fundamental claim: that Lucy Letby was present during every suspicious death and collapse. The mathematics, they argued, spoke for themselves. But statisticians worldwide began to question something crucial. Had the data been cherry-picked to fit a predetermined narrative? The prosecution focused on a specific time frame: June 2015 to June 2016. They excluded earlier deaths when Letby wasn't working. They excluded periods when she was on training courses. Critics argue this created what's known as the sharpshooter fallacy, drawing the target around where the arrows already landed. Professor Peter Green, a leading statistician, called the analysis seriously flawed. Others were even more damning. The fundamental problem? Correlation was being presented as causation, a dangerous leap in any criminal case. Consider this. Ice cream sales correlate with drowning deaths. Both increase in summer. But ice cream doesn't cause drowning. Yet the jury heard that Letby's presence during incidents was proof of guilt. The statistical improbability became the smoking gun. But what if the data told a different story? What if there were other factors the prosecution ignored? Independent analysis revealed something disturbing. When you included all the data, the correlation began to crumble. Deaths occurred when Letby wasn't present. The hospital's mortality rate was climbing before she ever arrived on the unit. This raises a chilling question. Was Lucy Letby convicted by mathematics, or by mathematical manipulation? The prosecution claimed Lucy Letby killed babies by injecting air into their bloodstreams. Air embolism, a medical term that became the cornerstone of 7 murder charges. But leading medical experts are now questioning everything about these diagnoses. Dr. Michael Hall, a consultant pediatrician, calls the evidence deeply flawed. The truth is, Air embolism in newborns is incredibly difficult to prove definitively. Post-mortem examinations found no conclusive evidence of intentional air injection. Air bubbles in tiny bodies can occur naturally during the dying process. Gas can form in blood vessels after death, mimicking what prosecutors called murder. Dr. Dewey Evans, the prosecution's key expert, had never worked in neonatal care. His conclusions are now being challenged by specialists who actually treat premature babies. Multiple pediatric experts have stated the medical evidence simply doesn't support murder charges. The supposed weapon of choice? It might not have been a weapon at all. As we'll see next, the hospital itself was hiding secrets that may explain everything. Building on what we've covered, there's another layer to this story. A layer that exposes the rot beneath the surface. The Countess of Chester Hospital wasn't just dealing with unexplained deaths. It was a facility in complete systemic failure. In 2016, sewage was literally backing up into patient areas. Raw waste flowing where newborns were fighting for their lives. Infection rates were skyrocketing. The very environment meant to heal was becoming a breeding ground for deadly bacteria. Staff shortages meant nurses were stretched beyond breaking point. One person covering areas meant for three. Equipment failures were routine. Monitors malfunctioning. Alarms ignored because they went off constantly. The neonatal unit was operating with dangerous staffing ratios. Babies were dying, and someone had to be blamed. Hospital executives knew about these problems. Internal memos detail years of ignored warnings about patient safety. Rather than address systemic failures, management chose a different path: find a scapegoat. Lucy Letby became the perfect target, a young nurse with no criminal history, working in a unit plagued by institutional neglect. The deaths were real. The families' pain was devastating. But were they blaming the wrong culprit? Multiple experts now argue that environmental factors, not murder, explain these tragic deaths. A hospital in crisis needed someone to blame. Lucy Letby was convenient. But was she guilty? But this story doesn't end with a conviction. In fact, it's only just beginning. Across Britain's most prestigious universities, a quiet rebellion is brewing. Leading scientists are doing something unprecedented. They're publicly challenging a murder conviction. The Royal Statistical Society has made an extraordinary statement. They want a full review of the evidence. Pediatricians are speaking out. Statisticians are raising alarms. Even former prosecutors are having doubts. As we covered earlier, the statistical evidence was the prosecution's strongest weapon. Now experts say it may be fundamentally flawed. Building on what we discussed about the hospital's crisis, new evidence suggests systemic failures, not serial killing. Lucy Letby's legal team is preparing what could be one of Britain's most significant wrongful conviction appeals. The implications go far beyond one woman's fate. They strike at the heart of how we use science in the courtroom. How many convictions rest on statistical evidence that sounds convincing, but isn't scientifically sound? This case exposes a dangerous gap between what sounds like science and what actually is science. The families of those babies deserve answers. Real answers built on solid evidence. Whether Lucy Letby is guilty or innocent, this case has already changed everything. It's shown us that even in our modern justice system, we can still get it catastrophically wrong. If this opened your eyes, smash that like button and subscribe for more.